Hello everyone, it's time for a live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for January 12th through 18th, 2026. It's the third week of January, and it feels like it's been a million years in January already. So much happening. But for those that are watching live, as always, do say hello where you're listening from, even if you are part of what's called my Tuesday Club. I know that we are an international audience, so we are all around the world. And that for those that don't know who I am, my name again is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium, currently located in the rolling hills of Central Maryland. And every Monday, we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. And we had a little bit of technical difficulties last week. I'm sorry about that. It's not the mic. It's just the gremlins in the internet. But I tested it. It should all be good. And we should be ready to go like normal. But just a reminder, because it is a new year, I did a 3.5-hour webinar on the astrology of 2026. I know that might sound a little bit daunting, but part of it is the overview. I even go month by month to look at the big highlights. I talk about Saturn's going to go into Aries in just 4 weeks from almost today. 4 weeks from tomorrow. In 2 weeks, we're actually going to have Neptune go into Aries. We have Uranus going into Gemini at the end of April. We have Jupiter going to Leo. We have Chiron making a little bit of a dip for 3 months into Taurus. It's just a year where we have new hands on the clock pointing towards new hours. It's not often, you probably have heard me say this in previous weekly updates, it's not often that we have the outer planets change signs so quickly together. I went back at least 300 years, and you don't see that sort of 1, 2, 3, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, for example. But that said, Astrology of 2026, you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com/webinars to see my webinar. And also I did put up the introduction, so if you just want to check it out, see if you like it. And it also includes the full webinar it includes a sign-by-sign guide. So a lot of things to talk about, not just this week, of course, for the year, but this week we do have a lot going on. So we have a Capricorn new moon later this week. A new moon resets the lunar month, this one in particular, because it is in Capricorn. It resets the year because it takes all that sort of new year energy. Let's do the Capricorn stuff. And it says, okay, here's your new moon. We just had to wait till the 18th. This week we bring in the energies of Mars opposite Jupiter. We saw this on Saturday, but really it was building all week long, and this energy will not just be with us this week, but it will be part of the new moon to come. And Mars opposite Jupiter, I keep wanting to say Neptune, Mars opposite Jupiter, it doesn't happen. It happens every like 26, 27 months. Like last time we had Mars opposite Jupiter was October of 2023. There was also an eclipse month, but that's a separate topic. And these two planets, Mars in particular, it really pushes and provokes. So this energy, this week we even have Mercury opposite Jupiter. I think that's the only one, because Venus opposite Jupiter was last week, but it gets into these big themes of what do we believe in, what do we stand for, what do we think is true. This is also, we're coming to the end of a lunar month, and this lunar month began on December 19th and in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius has been sort of the major lens for us over the last almost 4 weeks. And again, with the Jupiter opposite Mars, it really was bringing these bigger questions to the forefront. What I wanted to talk about today a little bit more in depth, because I was speaking about this, I have a Facebook account, I was speaking this on Instagram, on my website, and talking more about Chiron. Now, Chiron is a newer addition to astrology. So it's not the planet that we learned about in elementary school. It's actually an asteroid. And for me at least, and I'm sure this is the case for many astrologers, Chiron represents a pain point. It represents something that needs to be healed. Why am I talking about Chiron? Because this, not just the new moon that we're going to have on the 18th of January, but even the Mars-Jupiter opposition that we had on the 11th of, I think it was the 11th of January, it made what's called a T-square. I know this is a little bit technical, but it made a T-square to Chiron and Aries. So that energy, especially, Mars is the ruler of Aries, was really pushing on a deeper pain point. I wanted to talk about Chiron because it's a really important planet, even though technically, traditionally, it's not a planet. But it can either be a pain point or it can be a key. And that key opens up the higher potentials of our life. We all have something that needs to be healed. Very often, Chiron works on a subtle level. You can't see Chiron really. I know that if you Google Chiron, it talks about the wound or the wound that doesn't heal. And if you've been around my work for a while, that's not language I use. I will sometimes refer to Chiron as a wound because I think it's accessible, but I don't think that fully describes what Chiron is. And so because I'm a psychic medium, I receive information sometimes about astrology. And for me, the way that I've been taught about Chiron is that it's like a knot. It's a knot in the fabric of your life. It's a knot in the fabric of creation, because all of creation is a tapestry. And so when we hit that pain point that might feel a little bit like scar tissue, it's pulling at that knot. It's pulling at something that goes much deeper than we can even imagine. So for us individually, whatever we are feeling, it has deeper roots. Whether it's last week, whether it's this week, and even going into next week, it has deeper roots. Chiron can sometimes pull at threads that take us back to our earliest childhood and sort of those deeper imprints, and sometimes the things that happen. And so the emotions that can come up around Chiron, that pain point, actually take us right back to our earliest years. Chiron can even touch into ancestral memory, sort of the emotions we're feeling. Maybe it's ours, maybe it's not ours. And so it really pulls on something deep and psychic. Chiron, hopefully this makes sense, it really works in an liminal, interstitial, it works at the level of the veil, so to speak, between this world and the next world. And Chiron can even get into past lives. Doesn't mean that you have to necessarily believe in that, but it's to consider that sometimes those knots, those threads, go back to even further than we can imagine. For me, this is why I don't like to always call Chiron a wound, and particularly I don't use the language, the wound that doesn't heal, or even the wounded healer, because honestly, what does that mean? Because Chiron, it really, when we open up to a collective experience, like as above, so below, as within, so without. Astrology uses this axiom over and over again to teach how is it that the heavens are having an effect on us. It's not that they're having an effect on us per se, it's reflecting something inside of us. The universe is both outside of us and it's also inside of us. And so if the tapestry of creation is outside of us, it is also within. So there's a deep sense of empathy and compassion, especially if you have a strong Chiron aspect in your astrology. You could have Chiron rising, you could Chiron conjunct your sun. People who even have Chiron in what's called their career sign, their 10th, sometimes it's a role that they play in their professional life. There is a deep empathy for the interconnectivity of everyone and everything. And sometimes a deep instinct that when we work on something for ourselves and free ourselves from something, let's say we free ourselves from that knot, it helps to free something for somebody else. So there is a personal level with Chiron, there is a collective level with Chiron. And I always say this to clients, Chiron says to us, we take the things that have made us suffer the most and we use it like medicine to help and inspire other people. And you can do that within your your circle, within your sphere, within your family. You can do that at the level of your community. You can even do that on a much bigger level. So we have these Chiron squares this week. In fact, today we have Sun square Chiron. Sun is in Capricorn, as you may not know. Chiron's in Aries. Chiron has been in Aries since 2018, 2019. Then tomorrow, the 13th of January, we have Mars square Chiron. Mars, it's what's called a personal planet. The sun, the moon, they're what are called luminaries. They give or reflect light. But Mars is like your power, your desire, your sense of individuality. Sometimes it's your anger, it's your rage, but it's also that motivation that we all need to go after what we want. Square Chiron, and particularly Chiron is in Aries, and something that I've noticed over the past few years with Chiron and Aries is that the pain point with Chiron and Aries is that pain of really finding either our individuality or being able to have the courage and bravery to go after what we want or to stand up for ourselves. And if you were born with Chiron and Aries, which means you're born between 1968 and 1977, if I'm doing my math right, it's something that really gets into that psychic landscape of your own life. And maybe again, with that imagery of the tapestry, Chiron can show you a knot in this tapestry, maybe a knot that needs to be undone, or Chiron can show a rip and a tear and something that needs to be repaired. And this is the thing, that's why I don't say it's the wound that doesn't heal, because eventually it does heal with a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and eventually being able to connect our personal pain and suffering to a collective experience. That helps Chiron to transition from the archetype of the wound or the knot or whatever, in the myth of, it's a Greek myth, Chiron is a centaur. And depending on how you read the myth or which version, Chiron is either abandoned by his mother or not. But there's a sense of otherness with Chiron. It really shows us sometimes how we can be different from other people. I like to use the myth only so much. I think it opens the door to something, but sometimes we can't be too literal about it. And in the myth, Chiron is wounded, and even though he is the father of medicine and astrology and astronomy, he's not able to heal himself. So there's a lot of deep symbology and imagery in that myth, but again, I think it's meant to open the door, not to be a literal taking. So this week, again, we have these Chiron aspects, what's called a Chiron T-square, and we are working on our tapestry. We are undoing the knots. We are opening up our hearts, I hope, and really trying to connect to a collective experience, because at the end of the day, we are all human beings, all 8 billion of us on planet Earth. And these are all the Capricorn planets as they leave the sign. In fact, this week, Venus will be the first to leave Capricorn. It'll go into Aquarius on I think it's the 17th, on Saturday. And this is our first planet to start to go into Aquarius. So we're actually beginning to shift towards Aquarius season next week. We'll talk more about this. The sun will go into Aquarius. But before that, we have Mars square Chiron tomorrow on the 13th. We're even going to have Mercury square Chiron on I think that's supposed to be the 16th. Yes. So it's just something that adds a deeper, a richer, a psychic element, a spiritual or even soul level element to our experiences right now. And let's keep in mind that Saturn and Neptune are at the end of Pisces. I wrote this in my newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter in the show notes. That the end of the zodiac, which is where Saturn's at 26, 27 right now of Pisces. Neptune's at 29 Pisces. It's kind of a weird place because it represents the end of a journey, the end of a cycle, that last symbolic breath before inhalation, and the things that are sort of culminating or leaving in preparation for a new cycle. Saturn hasn't been in this part of the zodiac since 1996. Except for last year, just for a little brief visit. Neptune hasn't been in this part of the zodiac for 160 years because Neptune has a much bigger cycle, much longer cycle than Saturn. So we are in the waiting room of something, question mark, question mark. We have 4 more weeks of Saturn in Pisces, and then Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th. This represents a major shift for the new year because Saturn is always the time, the capital T time. It is always our priorities for the year, and in reality, our long-term priorities, because Saturn typically spends 2 to 3 years in each of the 12 zodiac signs. So we're all going to have a priority shift in 2026. And so we go from sort of the fogginess of Pisces, the existentiality and the emotionality of Pisces. Why am I here? What is this all for? What is my meaning and purpose? To the action and the drive and the new cycles and new beginnings and the renewal of Aries. Just the wild card in all of this, and we will see this with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th, that will play out varying times throughout 2026, is that Neptune is part of the mix. Saturn is our physical, material world. Neptune is not. Neptune dissolves the boundaries between our physical plane and our non-physical plane. So it sort of adds a little bit of a question mark. We haven't had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries since I think the beginning of the 18th century. Yes, you heard me correctly. Last time there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction period was 1989. So very different time. About every 36, 37 years, we get a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. If you're born in, I think it's 1952, you also have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Libra. So there's sort of this bigger feeling to everything. And then, February is also going to be a big month for other reasons, because we will have a solar eclipse on February 17th, and that solar eclipse will be in Aquarius. And it says that in addition to everything that I just said, February is a turning point because solar eclipses mark a new 6-month chapter. They can bring change, and we are a month away also from a solar eclipse this week. Solar eclipse not this week, but this week we are a month away from a solar eclipse. And I've just noticed that, there is sort of this, especially as we get into the end of the month, sometimes we can see the eclipse before, or things start to bring in the energy of the eclipse even in the weeks before the eclipse. So that's something that we can keep coming back to. But as I mentioned earlier, we have a Capricorn new moon this week. This new moon will be on the 18th, sorry, my brains. And so this new moon says that we are opening up a new lunar month, one that will be lived through Capricorn. And Capricorn is the 10th sign of the zodiac. It is ruled by Saturn. It is typically a sign that is about our material world, the lives that we live, what we build, our careers, our responsibilities, our worldly life. What do we become? What are our ambitions? And so it's a sign that typically pushes us. That's why we get into the new year. And I realize, everybody has different feelings about resolutions and sort of the culture of the new year. But it's that's that very traditional Capricorn energy that's saying, okay, it's another year. It's a new time, because Saturn is time, Capricorn is time. What are you doing? And so with the new moon on the 18th, it gives us an opportunity to refocus. I know it's only January, but to refocus for the year, to set intentions, to plant seeds. Capricorn is a great energy, especially with Saturn. If you want something to stick, you want it to last. But here's your caveat. Saturn, its ruler, is at the end of the zodiac. So you don't want your intention to be that it sticks so much, because what happens is that Saturn is going to go into Aries, and it's going to be a new cycle. So you have to sort of keep in mind that whatever your intentions are, it's more with something leaving and something ending and preparing space for something new than like making really hard and fast concrete decisions. Because I've just noticed this, and I've been around the block. I said this last week. January 9th, was Empowering Astrology's 16th birthday. It was a sweet 16. It has its origins back in Twitter, back when Twitter actually was around, and here we are 16 years later. So what was I talking about? So what I've noticed in the past 16 years of doing that is that when we do something, when a major planet is at the end of a mutable sign, and Pisces is the end of a mutable sign, it means it's shifting. It means it will become something new when the planet goes into zero cardinal, or in this case, zero Aries. So something just to keep in mind. I feel that ultimately, especially with this Capricorn new moon with Saturn and Pisces, it's also something about trying to make sure that our material and physical lives, Capricorn, are in alignment with something deeper. Because ultimately, Pisces connects us back to our spirit, our soul, our inner values, a sense of meaning and purpose on a deeper level. It's an odd combination, but on some level it is to find that balance between the physical and the non-physical. So when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, we'll talk a little bit more about what this new moon and perhaps what even this Chiron energy is bringing up for you over the next week, if not the next 4 weeks. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week, January 12th through 18th, 2026. Got to get used to saying that. So let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet, and it's been in a bit of a configuration at the moment with Jupiter. This is happening between Jupiter in your sign of home and family and Mars in your sign of career or responsibilities or duties on a public or professional or worldly level. So there is a push and pull perhaps between your inner world and your outer world, your domestic life and your professional life. With Chiron in Aries, and Chiron has been in Aries since 2018 and 2019, you've been working on something deeper around action, your relationship with individuality, your relationship with power, and Chiron is always getting into the deep psychic level of healing. So this is sort of the push and pull is asking you to stand up, to really state what you want, state what you need, and maybe that's the pain point, maybe that's the rub, so to speak, and how you're really trying to assert yourself, but maybe, with a sense of compassion for all the different factors that are going on. So it's putting you a little bit into, in between a lot of different things at the moment. Then there's Saturn at the end of Pisces, and you've got 4 more weeks of Saturn sort of at the end of a great cycle in your life. And so it says February 13th, 14th, depending on where you are in the world, you're beginning to step into a new cycle. That said, this Capricorn new moon that we're going to have on the 18th of January says that over the next 4 weeks, so this will take you into that solar eclipse that I mentioned. So February 17th is the new moon afterwards. It's also solar eclipse. It says that your career, your public life, your duties and responsibilities, your maturity, that's your focus for the next 4 weeks. And with Mars still in Capricorn, there's a lot of push for you to really work on your professional life, to go after your ambitions, to take on new responsibilities, and there could be new beginnings in your professional or public life that take you into January. But like I said, there might be a little bit of a pain point. Do I stay? Do I go? What do I want? What do I go after? So there's a lot of emotions that are coming up for you, but keep in mind, Aries, that ultimately you're at the end of a story or a big chapter of your life. So it's about preparing for something very new. Taurus, so Venus is your planet, and it's coming to the end of Capricorn this week, and on the 16th it will go into Aquarius. So for you, Capricorn is something called your 9th sign. So there's been a lot of push and pull this week, especially Venus has been with Mars and with Mars and the Sun, and Mercury in something called your ninth. Then you have Jupiter in your third. So there's a lot of push and pull, dynamic energy between information, ideas, what you believe in, what you stand for, what you think is true. And maybe that's created some pointed discussions or a need to share something that you really believe in. For example, maybe it's been teaching, maybe it's been travel. This part of your astrology also talks about learning and exploration as well. Venus gets out of this hot spot and goes into Aquarius, I said, on the 16th. And so Aquarius is your career. It is your professional life. And I wanted to put something on your radar, Taurus, because you will have a solar eclipse in your career sign on February 17th. So it says that your career, your professional life, your public life, your sense of duties and responsibilities, that's the area where you're going to see change very likely over the next 6 months. Venus is sort of in advance of that solar eclipse. So as your planet goes into the 10th sign, it's to start to pay attention, like what are the themes that are coming up in your professional life or around career or around responsibility or around your public life, because that could give you some clues into what's going on with this solar eclipse. Then there is Chiron. Chiron is in Aries. Aries is something called your 12th sign. There's a lot of deep inner psychic, emotional, existential feelings that are coming up. And Chiron has been in something called your 12th sign since 2018-19. It's hard to really concretely see or feel Chiron because it plays on such a subtle level, and even more subtle in something called your 12th. But whatever is pushing and pulling in your life right now, it's really asking for you to go inward, to connect to your deepest self, your spirituality, your sense of belonging to something greater. Maybe you need a retreat, maybe you need to reflect, but if some sort of deeper emotion is coming up, just sort of, sit with yourself and ask yourself, meditate, and why. The Capricorn new moon on the 18th says your 9th will be your focus over the next 4 weeks. Again, travel, exploration, maybe it's philosophical in nature. You're really getting into these bigger themes about what do you believe in, what do you stand for. This is also the space of people who publish, who put their ideas out there. A sense of conviction, legal matters, and these could be perhaps, depending on who you are, focuses for the next 4 weeks. Gemini. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is beginning to come to the end of its time in Capricorn. It's presently with the Sun, with Mars, with Venus, although Venus will leave Capricorn shortly. But it's just been a lot of energy in your astrology around something called the 8th. The 8th is a space in all of our astrology. For you, it's the sign of Capricorn, where we need to go to face ourselves. I know that sounds a little bit like, face myself, but this is the way that I say it. I'm a Scorpio. Imagine a life where you never question yourself. You never look within. Every day is the same. It's easy. Do you grow? Absolutely not. So you have this time each year, Capricorn season, to look at yourself, to go within, to question your motives, to see what you haven't been seeing. Because the work that we all do when we spend our time in the 8th, whether it's for 4 weeks or longer, that really creates our true inner wealth that we take with us throughout the rest of our life. So with Mars there, Mars might be pushing at deeper themes: trust, vulnerability, power, control, the psyche, the shadow, the parts of us that sometimes we push and project onto other people. It's a very psychological lineup of planets, and with the opposition to Jupiter, it might be getting into themes about, am I safe? Do I have enough? Who can I trust? And that's big and push and pull. And then in addition, especially with Mercury, your planet is square Chiron. Chiron is over in your 11th. It's been in your 11th since 2018, 2019. And so the healing work that you've needed to do over the last 7 years has been around community, connection, and the collective. So who do I trust? Like, am I safe? And maybe it's your relationship with friendship or community and the people in your life. Now, Chiron gets into really deep personal themes, and therefore deep personal things might be coming up this week. But as I said in the introduction, Chiron is a pain point, but it's also a key. And it helps us by opening up the higher potential of our life. And it says when we take the things that have made us suffer the most, when we have compassion and empathy for other people, it becomes a key and opens up the higher potential of our lives. Mercury, I think it's next week, will leave Capricorn, so it begins to pull away this sort of heavier energy. But we will have a Capricorn new moon. You typically have a Capricorn new moon in the space around this time each year. And it says that your emotional health and wellness is one of your main focuses for the next 4 weeks. There will be, let me rephrase that. This part of your astrology can also get into monetary themes, a sense of money and resources and income and the benefits that you have access to, the different savings. What's savings? The savings that you have access to, or maybe like really looking at how to make some financial changes in the new year. So if you want to make positive changes in your financial life, this is also the new moon for you. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week it's going a little bit slowly right now. It's going between Scorpio as we start the week all the way to Capricorn, and we will have that Capricorn new moon at 28 degrees. So later on Sunday, depending on what part of the world you are, the moon may get into Aquarius. But by and large, it's between Scorpio and Capricorn. For you, Cancer, Scorpio is a fellow water sign. It is your creativity, your self-expression, your need for passion and fun and play. Then we get into the middle of the week, the moon gets into your 6th sign, which is work and health and projects and how you take care of the day-to-day details of your life. And then as you get into the weekend, the moon is in Capricorn. We are actually coming to the end of the lunar cycle, so this is more of a week to go inward. And then you get that reset and that new beginning with the Capricorn new moon on the 18th of January. So that Capricorn new moon is in your relationship sign. You typically have a Capricorn new moon in this part of your astrology roughly this time every year. And it says that over the next 4 weeks, there's sort of the reset and new beginning and the energies of renewal. And the focus will be relationships. It's not just what I like to call capital R relationships, which could be your partnership if you're in a partnership. It could be the people, the major people that are in your life, but it's also how do you connect, relate, and socialize with people. Here's the thing, and there's been 4 planets in this part of your astrology over the last however many weeks. In particular, since the middle of December, it has been Mars. Mars is not a diplomat, and yet Mars has needed to either take a diplomatic stance over the last 5 weeks, or it's needed, or perhaps it's even been pushing and poking at certain things between you and another person, or you in relationships in general. Whatever has been going on, and maybe it's been bringing up a lot of emotions, keep in mind that Chiron, which is up in something called your 10th sign, which is career, responsibility, your public life, there's a deeper story to whatever you are experiencing, whether it's between you and another person, or maybe you and having a conflict with another person. Chiron in your 10th is saying, the pain point may be about you really, standing up for what you want, or, really taking the lead or responsibility or something. And so there's a push that might, pushing you to sort of maybe even step into a different phase of your life. And that might be, hitting on a nerve or a pain point, for example. But on a very surface level, the next 4 weeks are a time about really turning your focus towards the other people in your life. Saturn, and I wanted to mention this very quickly because Saturn is in your ninth. It's coming to the end of your ninth. It will go into your 10th career on February 13th. That's sort of a bigger shift for your astrology. And it says that career will be a major focus for the next couple of years. But whatever is happening between you and another person, or just you in general with other people, or how you connect and relate with other people, might be hitting on deep emotional and even philosophical themes. And there might be this need to make decisions, to stand up for what you believe in. But also, again, how do you find the balance between opposites? Leo, so the sun is your planet, and the sun is coming to the end of its time in Capricorn. By, I think, this time next week, the sun will be in Aquarius. So for you, Capricorn season, it represents the time, it sounds very much like the things that we do at the new year, to really focus on, like, I need to get organized, I need to clean out, I need to straighten up, I need to look at my schedule, I need to make new initiatives around my day-to-day life. Now, of course, everybody does this time of year differently, but it's also a time to really take stock, to analyze, is this working, is this not working? Your sixth sign, it's health and wellness, but it's also operations. And so this is the season, and even the new moon that's on the 18th of January, it is to refocus on the operations of your life. And if you have ever been in some sort of managerial position, or if needed to organize something, operations are how something flows. And it can always get better. And so maybe this is a time to really look at, do I need to tweak things? Do I need to do things differently? Do I need to plan my day differently, or sort of invest my time and energy in different ways? Mars is also in this space, and Mars has been pushing and pulling in a space that talks about your emotional health, your spiritual health, but also your physical health and wellness. And it's to try to find this balance between heaven and earth with this astrology. That said, a lot of this energy is coming up against Chiron this week. Chiron has been in something called your ninth sign since 2018-19. And Chiron, as a pain point, as something that we need to work on and heal, says the healing work has been around either your faith, or what do you believe in, what do you stand for. And faith doesn't have to be the faith of religion. Faith can be, that everything's going to be okay, that the faith that everything's going to work out, and maybe the faith in yourself, for example. But the ninth typically is a space that is trying to open up our eyes to the world, to make us want more, to go beyond ourselves. And it's to have the courage and bravery to let your life grow, or even to go after what you want, or really, build your life around something that you believe in and that you stand for. Saturn is coming to the end of its time in Pisces. And for you, I wanted to mention this, Leo, because it has been a little bit of emotionally heavy past 3 years, because Saturn has been in your eighth. So it's to start to see, like, what is the fruit, what is the result of all this inner work that you've been doing, or at least that's the idea. You should be doing this inner work in the last 2-3 years, because it represents a lot of inner growth and maturity that needed to happen. Let me go back, Leo. I wanted to put something on your radar because, and I talked about this in the introduction, we're going to have a solar eclipse on February 17th. And this solar eclipse is going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big deal for Leo, for Taurus, for Scorpio, and Aquarius, especially Aquarius, because the solar eclipse will be in Aquarius. But it's going to be in Leo's relationship sign. So relationships will be one of the areas of change in 2026 and 2027. I know that that's a kind of a cliffhanger, but I wanted to start to put that on your radar. Virgo, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury this week is beginning to come to the end of its time in Capricorn, a sign that in total with Mercury we've had 4 planets in Capricorn. That's a lot of Capricorn. And Capricorn for you is a sign that's meant for you to get back to the things that light you up, that give you joy, that give you passion. And it's the time, every new year that maybe because Capricorn's an earth sign and you're an earth sign, it's meant to sort of reconnect with something that Virgo loves to do. Maybe this is why we're all organizing our closets and our drawers. I joke, or cleaning out the fridge. I joke, Virgo, as we go into the new year. Now, with 4 planets, and particularly Mars in this part of your astrology, Mars always inspires, provokes, it motivates, and so there's been perhaps a lot of creative energy over the last 5 or so weeks. Maybe it's a time where you've been really feeling a need to express yourself, express your wants, your needs, your desires, maybe even romance, because the 5th can be romance. But we are coming off of what's called that Mars-Jupiter opposition that we had on Saturday, the 11th. And this is about you. It's about the world. It is about how you express yourself and that sense of individuality and what it's connected to. Your role in your relationship with community, the duties and responsibilities that you carry. And I think I even said this to a client. It's like, how do you, and Virgo typically puts everybody first. And that's not, of course, not all Virgos, but to its detriment. And I think with this Mars-Jupiter opposition, it's a call for Virgo to really make sure that they are getting in touch with their wants and their needs and their desires, and not always putting everybody first, because that is not a long-term strategy. So there will be a Capricorn new moon this week. It'll be at on the 18th at 28 degrees of Capricorn, and so in a way it's like wrapping you into the mix. It's a new beginning to get back to the things that light you up, that give you joy and give you passion. Now, here's the thing, that this new moon does make a square to Chiron. Chiron has been in your 8th sign since 2018-19. It's actually a little bit of a bigger conversation, but Chiron represents a pain point, and more specifically, Chiron represents something that we need to heal. And a lot of the work that Virgo has needed to do over the last 7 years has been psychic, emotional, psychological. And so there's been a big call for a lot of healing work over the last 7 years. So whatever this thing that's coming up about you and your sense of individuality, your own wants and your desires, maybe the friction point this week is needing to look within, look into the psyche, and to really ask yourself, or to see truly what has been in the way. And sometimes it's us. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is coming to the end of its time in Capricorn this week. And you've had 4 planets in your sign of home and family, and pretty much over the last few weeks. And certainly it is the season to really focus on home and family. And I have a friend who has Libra rising, and she's just had like house guests for the holidays, and it's just been projects in the home, and it's just been a lot of things that have been happening in that part of her life. And I was like, 4 planets in the 4th. So the 4th represents not just home and family, but it's our base, it's our foundation, it's our roots. So this part of your astrology, at least in the short term, has really demanded your attention. Now, Mars has been there. Mars is not a quiet influence, so it's been on one hand great for projects and at the projects in the home and cleaning things out and reorganizing things, but Mars can also be a little bit provocative, especially around the bigger emotions, that sense of that psychic core, that emotional core that we all have. Now, we are still coming out of that Mars-Jupiter opposition that was on the 11th, and it is between you, your inner world, but also your duties and responsibilities. And there is a push and pull between maybe wanting to kind of stay cozy up in the home, in your home environment, but also what is being asked of you on a bigger level. So how do you find the balance between your external world, your external duties and responsibilities, a need to mature, versus something that's very close to home? For example, you will have a Capricorn new moon in this space, your home and family, on the 18th of January, and it says that this part of your astrology will continue to be a focus for the next 4 weeks. And so sometimes when there's a new moon, we're preparing for a move, we're thinking about moving, or we're just moving things around. in the household. Maybe our parents who are older need our attention, or we're sort of thinking about, I really need to create more stability and security in my life. I want to feel that sense of connection and family, even if it's not with our biological family. That said, this new moon, it squares Chiron and Aries. Now, Chiron, which is a planet, it's an asteroid, really, it represents a pain point. It represents something that we all are working on, and your own experiences are going to be specific to your own life. It's not like a universal experience with Chiron, but Chiron has been in the sign of relationships since 2018-19, and that's the area you've needed to work to heal. Even if hasn't been so obvious, because Chiron isn't always so obvious. But this opposition that we've been having between between Capricorn and also Jupiter in your 10th and Cancer has been sort of putting you a little bit in the crosshairs between something either in a relationship or how you connect and relate and socialize with people. You know, Chiron is sometimes to have the courage and bravery, even if that's not easy. And Chiron says sometimes we need to do the hard thing. We need to advocate for ourselves, or we need to find the balance between our wants, our needs, our desires, and the wants, needs, and desires of something else. Venus, your planet, it will change signs. This will be on the 16th. It will go into Aquarius. And so it begins to shift the focus in your astrology. And we'll talk more about Venus and Aquarius next week. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Mars has been in a little bit of a tight spot between Jupiter and Cancer. You also have the Sun, and Mars and Capricorn and Mercury and Venus. And Capricorn for you, Scorpio, represents something called your third sign. Mars, just in general, when it's in the third, Mars doesn't mince words. Mars is direct, and maybe this has just been a time where you've had to say things to really, sometimes not always say things very, you should not sugarcoat things, so to speak. And Scorpio just has a general reputation of trying to get to the heart of the matter. Maybe this has been a past 5 weeks, because Mars has been in Capricorn since the middle of December, where it's trying to get back to your voice, how you speak, how you listen, how you learn, how you communicate, and even to assert your authority, because Capricorn is generally a sign of authority. So there's been all this focus in this part of your astrology. The third, it's sort of pushing you with a sense of movement, to learn, to speak. And then we have Jupiter and the ninth. Now, the ninth in general is a space where we are trying to go beyond ourselves, trying to look outside of ourselves. If we never grow, if we never question ourselves, if we never travel, we never read about the world, we don't get educated, it's like we have a very small world. So the Jupiter in the ninth on some level is trying to open up your world. Maybe you have desire to travel. Maybe you have desire to learn more, and maybe this has also been a time that's been very philosophical. You sort of really are thinking about, what do you believe in, what do you stand for, what do you think is true. Jupiter in the ninth also gets into these bigger questions about convictions. We all have convictions, and sometimes life really pushes us to really figure out what our convictions are. What do we feel is right, and what do we feel is wrong. With the Capricorn new moon on the 18th, it says that for the next 4 weeks, voice, communication, writing, speaking, communication is going to be one of your focuses. But it still will have that dynamic opposition to Jupiter. So this is a time where you're maybe trying to share something, speak about something. It's saying there's a lot of ideas and information and beliefs, but just don't be self-righteous, because nobody likes that. And that's going to be a big connection throughout the next 4 weeks. All of this energy is square Chiron and Aries. And so for Scorpio, Aries is something called, oh gosh, I gotta do the math. Forgot where Aries is. It is the 6. It's been in your 6 since 2018-19. And, for you, it's kind of hard to really point a finger at Chiron and Aries over the last 7 years. But it says the 6 has been your area that you've needed to work on and heal. Either it's your relationship with work, maybe you're a workaholic, sometimes Scorpios are, or it's your relationship with your duties and responsibilities, or it's your relationship with your body, your health, your wellness, your sense of service to other people. And we all have our own relationship with Chiron in general, but there is some friction that's happening between the 3rd and the 6th, between discernment and choices, and needing to sort of maybe make different choices, or really look at how you're showing up and how you're being of service to other people, for example, and maybe even health in general. Saturn is, speaking of health, I want to put something on your radar. Saturn is coming to the end of Pisces. It will go into your 6th sign on February 13th. So in general, health and wellness is going to be a major priority for the next 2 years. Also, last thing, Scorpio, because it will be a solar eclipse a month from now on February 17th. It will be in Aquarius, which is your sign of home and family, roots and foundation. And it says your home environment, your living situation, and family is going to be one of the areas of likely big change in 2026. So a little bit of a cliffhanger. Sagittarius, you've had some big astrology going on. I know we've talked about this. Saturn is beginning to come to the end of its time in your 4th. In general, Sagittarius, you've been in a period of your life about settling down, turning your attention and your priorities towards home and family, which I know typically, famously, Sagittarius is a sign that wants to be out in the world and wants to travel, but maybe that hasn't been quite the focus, not 100%, depending on who you are, over the last few years. So your priority has been the home environment, and it's for you to see how that part of your life, this chapter, is beginning to come to a conclusion over the next few weeks. It is Capricorn season. We will have a Capricorn new moon. This will be on the 18th. Now, this is typically the time for you to look at money, income, material stability, and security. It is a time to make it's Capricorn season, to make the mature decisions and whatnot around money and income and spending. So that said, I want to go back to Jupiter, because Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter has been in your 8th sign since the beginning of June 2025, June 9th. And it will be there for a year, but my point is that the energy overall the last 6 months has really been turning you inward. And I wanted to point that out because last week on the 11th, but this continues throughout this week and into the new moon, there's been a lot of tension in Sagittarius' astrology because Jupiter has been opposite Mars. It's been a big and push and pull around value, your sense of value for yourself, even bigger themes about intimacy, trust, vulnerability, and maybe even power and control. If this is about money, you're really trying to, assert yourself, or to really figure out what you want, or even what's of philosophical value for you around money and income. But it might be a week or even last week that's been pushing on deeper psychic and emotional themes. Since 2018 and 19, Chiron, while it's not a planet per se, but Chiron has been in your 5th sign of self, creativity, personality, identity, all that time. And so Chiron always represents a pain point and what we are healing. And you needed to really, and it's going to be hard for every Sagittarius to fully see this, but you've needed to really work on yourself and how you express who you are, and even your relationship with your desires and your creativity over the last 7 years. So whatever is coming up between this opposition and even the energies of the new moon, it's kind of pushing you to take a look at yourself and maybe get vulnerable and maybe see yourself, or maybe in a way that you haven't been able to see yourself, because there is something about this new moon period and even the opposition to Jupiter that's been trying to get you to grow up and to step into a new phase of your life. It is hitting on big emotional points, so this might be a week that's really moving a lot of emotions, and If that happens, how do you sit with yourself and how do you really see something that needs to be healed and needs to be released? Capricorn, happy birthday, Capricorn. I know we are at the last stretch of Capricorn season, and we will have a Capricorn new moon on the 18th. So this is the new moon that acts as a personal reset for your year, a time for new beginnings, to plant seeds, and this will take you into your next birthday season. That said, and we've been talking a lot about this over the last couple of years, but your planet is Saturn, and Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. I know a lot of people scratch their heads and they're just like, I have no idea what I was doing last week, let alone March of 2023. It's not to say that anything particularly was happening. It just is saying that over the last 2.5 years, your life has really centered on a very particular part of your astrology, your third, how you think, how you listen, your relationship with education. Maybe you've been taking classes, maybe you've been working to find your voice, maybe you've been studying. If it's not that, and I've noticed this, I've noticed this a few times at this point, that when Saturn goes through the third, it's really a bigger lesson around choice. And the choices that you're making, and even sometimes the choices that set you up for the road ahead. So this could be a time where the choices are really, it's like, the fork in the road. You're either going this way or you're going that way. And the choices are very important because when Saturn goes into Aries, it really marks a new chapter and phase for your astrology, and one where home and family will be a priority for you into April of 2028. So again, you will have this Capricorn new moon. It says it's a time for new beginnings, but this new moon, it's square Chiron and Aries. Now, Chiron is not a planet per se. It is an asteroid, comet, depending on who you ask. But at this point in my career, it's something that I really see as a powerful influence, even if it's subtle. So since 2018 and 19, Chiron has been in your fourth sign: home, family, roots, foundation. If Chiron is pain point, and Chiron represents that something that we all have to heal, that has been your healing work over the last 7 years. Now, of course, this is going to mean different things to different Capricorns. We all have different lives, and maybe you've been working on a lot of deep ancestral work over the last 7 years, or maybe your relationship with your family or your memories, and getting deeper into that pain point or that nerve or that psychic, that deep part of us that we really need to get in touch with so that we can release something. If deep emotions are coming up this week, sit with it. Follow it. What are these emotions trying to tell you? Where are they coming from? It's not to analyze or intellectualize, because our psyche, our subconscious, our unconscious is always trying to show us something that we can't see. But this is all preparing you for some sort of new beginning and chapter of your life. So maybe you're feeling grief, and grief is a natural part of leaving one phase of your life and preparing for another. Maybe it's something from the past that needs to be looked at with new beginnings. Maybe you're sort of juggling, the duties and responsibilities, or even the choices that you want to make, but also needing to look at bigger factors, for example. But it's a big time, especially there's something about relationships. You've had Jupiter in your relationship sign, so maybe there's been some tension with relationships, or even how you connect, relate, and socialize with people. But it all represents something that needs to be healed, especially as Chiron's been pushing on a deep button this week and last week. Aquarius, so Saturn is your planet, and Saturn, as you probably know at this point, Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. And you have been in a period of your life that is coming to an end where money, income, material stability, your relationship with finances, your relationship with your own self-worth and value, your inner sense of stability and security has been your priority for the last 2.5 years. And with Saturn beginning to come to the end of Pisces, that work is beginning to draw to a close and perhaps even to a conclusion. So it's begin to listen for whatever it is, that theme that has been present in your life since March of 2023 around money, income, material stability, and security. Now, Saturn on February 13th, it will go into your third sign. So it says that education, the mind, how you think and listen and learn will be a priority for the next 2.5 years until April of 2028. That said, it is a Capricorn new moon. The Capricorn new moon on the 18th. Capricorn is what's called your 12th sign. Here's sort of the funny thing about what's been going on with the sky. There are so many planets at the moment in something called your 12th sign. You've come to the end of a personal cycle and maybe even a much bigger cycle. The 12th represents the end of the road, a time where we go within, we reflect, we release, and we prepare for the new cycle or the new chapter to come. For some of you, it's been very quiet. You've needed to rest, recuperate, prepare, clean out. For some of you, it's been very spiritual. Why am I here? What is the meaning and purpose of my life? To question. The thing that I said this is kind of a weird time is because we've had this Jupiter opposition. Jupiter has been in your 6th. We had the opposition just on the 11th, so a few days ago. But this energy between your earthly life and your inner life or your spiritual life is really in a push and pull throughout, even into February, because we have this new moon that's about to happen on the 18th of January, this month. Sit with whatever emotions are coming up, because this opposition and even the Capricorn new moon, it's hitting on what's called a square to Chiron and Aries. Chiron has been in your third sign, voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn, since 2018 and 19. It will begin to leave 2026 and 7, but that's time for another story. But Chiron represents a pain point. It's something that we need to heal. We all have something that needs to heal, and it's going to be very specific for your own life, Aquarius, but there's been something around how you speak, needing to heal how you communicate, how you listen, how you, the choices that you make. And that sort of deeper work has been coming to the forefront this past week and even this week, because it might not be hitting on deep emotional pain points like it is for some of the other signs, but it is getting into like how you perceive things, how you learn about things, how you communicate things. And of course, communication is incredibly important, and maybe you need to work on your communication skills this week. Finally, Pisces. Pisces, so Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter has been in a little bit of a tight spot over this past week and even in this week between Mars. Now, Jupiter, which represents you, but really where the energies of you are pointing, because Jupiter will spend about a year in each of the 12 zodiac signs, and it takes 12 years to go around the zodiac. So since June 9th of 2025, Jupiter has been in your 5th. Jupiter is in Cancer. Jupiter loves being in Cancer. Jupiter is also in a space of your astrology where it's trying to get you to reconnect with the spark of life, the things that light you up and give you joy, that the passion. For some, it's been about children. For some, it's been about needing to take the best of yourself and to put it into something. Now, Jupiter has been opposite Mars, and so on some level, there's been the point of tension about you and your sense of self and your individuality and how that connects to the greater whole. Maybe there's something going on between you and a friend, or maybe something between you and a group, or maybe it's something a little bit more existential and philosophical. Where do I belong? Who are my people, for example? Or even, how do I take action in the world? There are 4 planets in Capricorn right now, and Capricorn represents your 11th. Your sense of friendship, your social circle, your community, but also social issues, social causes, and even the collective. And so there is a push and pull between, where are you and how are you connected to what is happening in the world, for example. This energy is touching on a pain point. Chiron has been in your second sign, money, income, material stability, and security since, 2018-19. And Chiron is works a little bit on a subtle level. But if an emotion is coming up this week, if you don't know what it is, maybe it's really getting into something that you've been working on to heal around your value in the world, or how your value is perceived by other people. Maybe it's just to feel safe, to feel safe in this world. And Chiron always represents something that the more that we work on it, the more that we heal it, the more that it helps other people to find that space within themselves, because we were all connected. But this new moon in Capricorn on the 18th says for the next 4 weeks, and so this will take you into February. Your sort of focus for the next 4 weeks is about your community, the groups that you're connected with. Maybe you're connecting to old friends, or maybe you're starting a group, or maybe you're getting involved in a group, or maybe you're just sort of turning your attention to sort of the bigger social issues and social causes at the moment. But that said, we are about 4 weeks away from Saturn leaving Pisces, which of course that is either your sun sign or your rising sign. It's been a big chapter in your life, at least from an astrological perspective. And listen and feel and perhaps look for how something that began in 2023, particularly March of 2023, if not somewhere around there, is beginning to come to an end and a conclusion. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week, January 12th through 18th, 2026. So yeah, lots going on. But anyway, so that is your look at the astrology of this week. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify, I'm on YouTube. And of course, you can book a consultation with me, because I really love working with people, because your astrology isn't just about your personality. It's not about predicting what's going to happen to you or not happen to you. It is a living blueprint, something that you inhabit, something that you discover, and it really is helping to symbolically build and shape your life. So I love working with people to walk through the chart, and of course it's the new year, so it's always a good time to check in with what's going on with sort of these bigger shifts that are happening in 2026, and especially with the shift of priorities with Saturn and Aries. And so you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com, to book a consultation with me. The links are in the show notes, especially more to read about Chiron, other planets. And yeah, I appreciate you all, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.